began the miniature with a mood coat of Apocalypse Red Sky by Two Think Coats, as well as painting the energy blades pure white, which was Bold Titanium White by Proacryl. For a replacement color instead of that Two Think Coats red, you can give Warhammer Colors Galvorback Red a try instead. We're going to start with a base coat for the Zealot's armor, and for that we're going to take Tenebrious Gray by AK 3rd Gen and mix it in with Incubus Purple by Two Think Coats. As you're applying this layer, you don't want to fully coat the model. You want to use that undercoat of red we did to create your deepest shadow. And you can see here where I left areas of that red visible and the effect that it makes. So that mood coat in the video where I showed off the standard Zealot didn't do a lot, but here it is doing a ton of heavy lifting. And a neat thing you can do to bridge the difference between your base and that shadow is do some stippling blending. To create further contrast in the armor, I'm going to take Von Evil Purple from Two Think Coats, which is a black color with a tiny bit of purple in it, and we're going to use it to paint the accent pieces of the armor. Now, where you want this is ultimately going to be up to you, but I suggest spreading it out throughout the armor. So I'm going to be applying it in areas like the collar, the shoulder guard on the arm guard, inside the arm guard on the knee, and various other areas like that. Continuing back with the main part of the armor's color, we're going to be taking that Incubus Purple without any mixture and start to highlight that armor. This step can be a chunkier highlight, but don't go overboard because the contrast between that dark red and our armor colors is really going to sell this as sort of a black color rather than a purple color, which is what colors we're using for this armor. So just work slowly and catch those raised areas, those hard edges, and just highlight them. I also do some stippling highlighting. If you don't like doing that, you don't have to, but I like it, and so I do. But as we paint this layer, you can absolutely see how this is already all coming together with that dark red being our darkest shadow, as well as that mid-tone and the first highlight working together to create that kind of black purple armor. Ideally, as you paint this layer, your paint would be thinner than what I'm applying, but this is a troop, so I was rushing a little bit. And you can see here just how that stippling blend looks. At a micro level, it looks a little funny, but as you look at it in hand, it looks really great. Following that, we're going to be doing a final highlight on the armor, and we're going to be using Two Think Coats Enticing Purple. And like always, when you're doing a finer highlight, you just want to be more refined. You're going to be wanting less paint on your paintbrush. You're going to want to be using less pressure as you highlight. These final highlights really depend on your brush control, and brush control is something that only comes with experience. It's pretty hard to teach, and you naturally gain more brush control as you work with it. So if you're not confident in your thin lines, don't worry about it too much. You will get there, it just takes time and practice. But as I do this highlight, you can really see how little I'm doing, but how big of an impact it does have. So just be careful and don't overwork it. And here is how that black armor will look when it is completed. And as I zoom in, you can once again see that stippling gradient that I applied. And if this were a more elite character, I would do some glazes to blend it in some more, but I don't really have to for a troop. And you can see down here, I did less of that stippling. Next, for the nerve connections, which are definitely not hair, even though it looks like hair, and I know it's nerve connections, it connects them to the collar. I did a little bit of reading. We're just going to take Black Templar contrast and apply it over it. This will be the easiest way to give us a very dark color that contrasts with the armor and still remains like somewhat saturated because of our red undercoat. For our skin, we're going to base it in a mixture of Screamer Pink by Warhammer Color and Two Think Coats Decadent Purple. And once again, this color does rely on that undercoat of dark red that we did in the very first step. The addition of Screamer Pink might give it a little bit of a pink look, which seems strange at first, but it gives a little bit of warmth to the skin, and it makes a lot of sense once we start to highlight. And as you paint this, make sure your paint is thin so that way it blends nicely into that darker red. And make sure you're leaving some of those areas dark red to act as our deepest shadow for some nice contrast. And as you're working, you can see how this undercoat is really working for the entirety of the model, so it's a pretty important step and I hope you don't skip it. Next, we'll introduce the highlight for our skin, and for that we're going to use pure decadent purple. And even though it was part of our mixture earlier, it's going to provide a very nice striking contrast. So for this, you want to do some light brush strokes in areas you really want defined. So like this corner of the jaw, we will paint, but we will skip over the middle section of the jaw. And that contrast will really help define the face. And really for this, I do encourage you to work with very thinned paint. Right here you can see me working with really watered down paint, and it looks, extremely wet. What this is gonna do is it's just gonna let the blend work very naturally. And then as that's drying, if you need to, you can take some less thin paint and make some more noticeable highlights. These stronger highlights will be great for areas of heavier texture as well as the edges of your figure. Really how much you do just depends on how much work you want to do to make it look nicer. Since it's a troop, blend less, and the contrast we've already established will do a whole lot of work. You don't need to have that perfect blend. We'll move on to all the glowy bits, and for that we'll take bold titanium white and just do a nice base coat of all of the areas we want to be shiny red. So in the chest, the shoulder, the gauntlets, the knees, wherever. And don't forget the eye. Those can be difficult to do and even harder to film, so just brace yourself and get in there. Very little is needed to make an effective eye. Once all that white is dry, we're going to take a 50-50 mixture of two contrast paints, which are Magma Doth Flame as well as Blood Angels Red. I'm doing this mixture because I think the red contrast paints by Warhammer Color are just too dark, so the orange really helps make it more vivid. And for the eyes, I'm not using that contrast mixture. I'm just going to be taking an orange fluorescent paint and painting it right over the eyes. All right, we're gonna start with those side blades, and I'll admit this method is a bit weird. Weird, but it works. Anyways, we're gonna be taking magenta, Doomfire magenta contrast paint and applying it towards the middle of the blade. And once you've applied that, you're gonna clean your brush. You're gonna load it up with some fluorescent orange, and you're gonna start to apply it towards the outside of the blade. Now, as you're applying that orange, it's gonna mix in with the magenta, and that's absolutely fine, even if it looks a little ugly. You want that kind of wet, natural blend going on. And once you've applied that orange, it's going to be really important to let the entire thing dry. I do the side blades working one side at a time, so don't rush yourself, because honestly, this could be really easy to screw up. The blade's now dry, and you can see that I really didn't get that orange all the way on the edges, and that's perfectly fine. Since it's all dried, we'll just take more of that fluorescent orange and just recoat the entirety of the edge. And then once that's dried, we'll take some pure white and we'll add it into our fluorescent orange and just highlight the edge of the blade. It's at this point where you really get that nice pop, and it makes sense that we have that magenta color in there for a cool contrast. Now, if you want to use a dark red instead of magenta, feel free. I just thought the magenta looked pretty cool. You can also add this highlight towards the center of the blade on some of those raised, sparky areas. And if you feel like you did too much on this step, you can just take some more fluorescent paint and kind of coat over it. But just don't do too much of that because you could kill the magenta color. And here the Tal'Darim Zealot is complete, and this paint job took me a few times to really get the formula down, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. I love these purple tones as a stand-in for black. Black is a really cool color in which you could highlight it with blues, you could highlight it with reds, greens, or purples in this case, and it works. So if you want to experiment with the other colors for your Tal'Darim Zealot, give it a try. And here you can see a unit of those Zealots, or 2 units actually. And I was able to get 3 of them knocked out in a day's painting, and I'm a pretty slow painter. And I will be painting the Protoss for my personal army as Tal'Darim, so this will continue. But that doesn't mean I won't have studio color tutorials for Protoss in the future. I will. I'll just repaint over them like I did the Zealot that I used for the other tutorial. If this all excites you, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll catch you in the next one.